You go back to 9/11, and when Wesley Clark said we're going to invade 7 countries in 5 years, what you were talking about were the countries where those central banks were not on board to do programmable money, and their governance structures were not on board with essentially, because of Epstein, I'll call it the Rockefeller Rothschild model. There was an effort to say, okay, we're going to basically assert control of the central banks in those countries. That's my interpretation, and I think one of the reasons we're seeing so much tension around Iran is because Iran right now is the big leakage in the system.
How?
So
it's not about their nukes?
No. So, Iran's central bank counts. One of the reasons it counts is because their oil and energy is very important, including for China. And that's very important in the BRICS system. What the BRICS system is trying to do is to create independent payment systems. But if you're going to come out with programmable money, with digital IDs that are interoperable globally, and programmable money that controls in each jurisdiction centrally, you can afford leakage. And so you've got way too much leakage in the system to proceed with what they're trying to do. And Iran and the BRIC nations are a sticking point. And certainly Iran's oil, feeding China gives China greater independence.
So you think that one of the motives behind toppling all these governments was the creation of the control grid we're talking about now?
Right. So if you go back, you have the wonderful Richard Warner on your show.
Yep.
And Richard has a book called The Princess of Xi'an, which is about the sort of effort to take over the Japanese central bank. And I think what you're looking at, I think part of the state of play with both Russia and Iran is how are you going to make sure that those central banks are entirely in the system?
So, that was an amazing interview. And he told the story about writing this book on the Japanese central bank. I can't imagine a more obscure topic from my non-economically minded standpoint. It'd be like writing a book on postcards from the Falkland Islands. It's like, okay, a book on the Japanese central bank. And he said, well, actually, they suppressed it. I couldn't get it published in the United States. You can't get a copy. And that's like checkable, so I checked it. You can't get a copy of the book. It's really hard.
I think you can order from his publisher right now.
Okay. But, I mean, why would someone try to suppress a
Because
book?
it shows you the truth. It takes you right into the secret governance system, and it shows you the primary mechanism by which they implement policy.
Yeah. Well, it's always the things you're not allowed to say are probably the important things, right? I mean, whenever they penalize you for having a thought, you're probably on the right track.
Well, it's one of the critical train tracks of control. So it's what I call the third rail. So I use it to finance transit systems and train systems. So, a lot of these systems have 2 tracks that the wheels go on, and then they have a third rail that the power line runs on, and you get a train trap that flips over and sucks the energy from the third rail. So a lot of the things that really operate the third rail are very invisible. And for example, in central banking, to talk about tier 1 and tier 2 and tier 3 capital of the BIS of the banks, there's nothing more boring. It's designed to absolutely...
I just fell asleep in the middle of that sentence.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Is it boring by design?
The way you're taught to talk about it is boring by design. But it's like the mechanisms of the legal system. If you look at the mechanisms of civil procedure, criminal procedure, and you get into the weeds on it, it can be very boring unless you understand the application and